Friends, European delicacy in times of war sometimes just leaves me completely at a loss for words. The Financial Times writes that European officials have now decided, first and foremost, to limit any public criticism of Viktor Orban, so as not to give the impression that they are actively trying to influence the upcoming April elections in Hungary, and of course, under absolutely no circumstances are they to cut his funding from European funds. Well, yes, that would just give him another argument to criticize Brussels. And again, it would seem like they're trying to influence the elections. My God, man, he says it outright. Brussels is the threat. Brussels is the enemy, not Moscow. Europe openly recognizes Moscow as the enemy. And Moscow is waging war against Europe. On top of everything else that's already happened, there is now information that Wagner recruiters are currently recruiting people for terrorist attacks. There is already a war going on in Europe itself. Russia is at war with Europe, and Russia has allies in Europe. By the way, Russia is very actively interfering in elections in European countries, using money, rhetoric, pressure, anything at all, and without any shame. And Europe is playing delicately. Let's not offend Orban, let's not criticize him, otherwise, God forbid, it might affect the elections. It creates a situation, as if it's like a boxing match. And one boxer declares that he will fight strictly by the rules, following all the conditions, being polite and decent, while the other openly hits him with his hands, his feet, and his seconds hand him an oar, a log, a stick. Soon they'll give him a knife and a gun. The first boxer keeps defending himself with just his gloves. The result, by the way, is predictable. Urban. Baba Yaga behind enemy lines. He is a long-standing ally of Putin and effectively a political saboteur within Europe. Now. And it would be quite logical, given his rhetoric about Brussels being innate, to stop all funding. Say, dude, are you against the European Union? Leave, and in the meantime sit without any money. Let Putin give you money since you're such good friends. That would be quite logical. Of course, our president doesn't tie himself down like that. He was pretty tough on Orban, saying he shouldn't be growing a belly, but should be building up the army. Overall, I support this because I consider Orban a fundamental opponent of Ukraine. In addition, a good friend of mine, who is currently working in Europe and travels quite frequently, shared with me that there are actually various posters being displayed there depicting a bloody Zelensky alongside images of Ukrainian bandits. That's basically the foundation of Orban's election campaign. So, Zelensky's anger. I understand his statements, and I support them. The only thing is, it wouldn't have played in Orban's favor, because the Magyar, it seems, is ahead of him on the issues. This isn't our Magyar, it's their Magyar, the leader of the opposition party. But criticism coming from abroad, as a rule, adds points. Alright, let's see how things develop. We have our own war here, which is quite... In the active phases, there are three directions: Konstaka, Pokrovsky, and Gulyapol and Orekovo. But I call all of this collectively Zaporizhia because the goal is Zaporizhia, and they're pushing in from Orekovo and Gulyapoli simultaneously. It's considered two directions, but the essence is the same. And while things are still quite heated there, there's no talk of any lull at the front. There is an exchange of strikes. At night, Zircons flew again. At night, drones flew again across Ukraine. But we also struck quite well at a number of targets, including oil infrastructure, Sochi, Anapa, the Taman Peninsula, and Crimea. And finally, a few drones made it to Moscow. Videos of all this, filmed by our, as I call them, People's Russian correspondents, are available on my Telegram channel, Sazonov Official, and on Facebook for those who use it, Kyrylo Pravdarub. The links are in the video description. The war really is such that on Gulyapol and Orikhiv, we pushed them back a little. We cleared the gray zone, a very large one. In fact, we liberated and made 4 settlements part of our territory. In some places, there are breakthroughs up to 10 kilometers, but I wouldn't talk about a major offensive yet. We just don't have the resources. But the good thing is, we disrupted their offensive. It will be much more active in the spring. According to Konstaka, nothing works out for them. Absolutely zero. In Slavic, the progress is minimal, and there are still 500 meters left per week with big losses. The situation in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd is interesting. Mirnograd, they announced a week ago that he was completely captured, as they say, liberated. But a few days ago, all news about Mirnograd from official Russian media was removed at the request of the Ministry of Defense. They say it was because of an unsuccessful photo of Gerasimov. In reality, a small part of Mirnograd is still held by our paratroopers. They're there, holding their ground and harassing the enemy with raids and drones. In Pokrovsk as well, we are holding the western outskirts, and fighting is ongoing there. Of course, the enemy really wants to close these issues so that the liberated group, which has been freed, can be partly placed on the defensive and partly transferred to Konstaka and Slavyansk and Lyman. This is obvious because it is an agglomeration, Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, Konstantinovka and Drushkovka. For them, it is now the key and main issue in the Donetsk region. But for now, they can't resolve the issue and they can't redeploy. And at the Munich conference, something was said that caused anger among many, but it was said nonetheless, and it is true, that Europe is preparing for a possible Russian aggression, restructuring its army, changing everything, modernizing, investing money, but for this they need time. And if the war between Russia and Ukraine ends now, it will be a problem for Europe. The risks and threats will sharply increase. So the conclusion is, keep fighting, guys. Of course, they will help us, help with money and other things, but I would really like them to put aside their delicacy and softness, and to behave more like allies who are actually interested in our advantage. In other words, they put their fifth column types like Orban and Fico on a short leash, shut them down without closed off oil exports from Russia, any movement of transport from Russia and Belarus. Because that's a strategic ally and a lot of issues are resolved through Belarus. So they should somehow state their position less delicately because, as they say, in war as in war. I understand that they are satisfied with the current situation, the situation as it is now, but if you still declare that you are our allies, then at least show that you are capable of resistance, and at the very least crack down on Putin's agents in the European Union. Otherwise, it just looks pathetic. And then you get offended at Trump for speaking disparagingly about Europe. Be stronger, braver, more decisive to be respected. Well, for us, we have work to do.